Good morning. I'm Steve McClure, and I represent the 54th District here in the Illinois State Senate. But before I was a state senator, I was a prosecutor right here in Sangamon County. And we are here today in response to an unprecedented increase in domestic violence deaths over the last few years. According to the Illinois Coalition Against Domestic Violence, from 2022 to 2024, deaths from domestic violence increased by 140%. This is an emergency that needs action now. In response, we are introducing a package that includes increased penalties for domestic violence perpetrators with a focus on addressing proven risk factors. Experts and law enforcement tell us that one of the biggest indicators of future violence when an abuser violates an order of protection is not being taken seriously in the state of Illinois. Currently, violating an order of protection is charged as a misdemeanor, allowing abusers to attack victims over and over again, terrorizing victims with little legal consequence. And this sends the wrong message, and it doesn't give our legal system the necessary tools to keep people who break these orders behind bars. To put things into perspective, if someone steals a candy bar from a gas station, that is also a misdemeanor. And that's why I have introduced Senate Bill 3140 that increases the penalties for violating an order of protection to a felony, and the second violation to a higher class felony. This would deter people from violating orders of protection, and the felony charge would allow for more intervention and long-term rehabilitation. The general increase will give law enforcement more options to enforce violations, and increased charges will hopefully result in jail time, keeping abusers away from victims and allowing victims to get needed services. And now I want to introduce you to my constituent, Dakota Sebring, a survivor of domestic violence, who is here to tell you her story of repeated abuse and how hard it was to hold her abuser accountable.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Dakota Sebring, and I am here today because I have survived domestic violence. I'm also here today because the system that was set to protect me did not stop the harm as quickly as it should have. On March 16th of 2025, I was violently assaulted and strangled, leaving significant injuries to my face and my neck. After this, I did what I was supposed to do. I called the police, and the person that did this to me was taken to jail, and he served 30 days in jail for aggravated domestic battery and domestic battery. After serving his 30 days, he was let out under the provision of a no contact order and also a order of protection. Hearing this, I had faith in our system that myself and my daughter would be safe and have stability after this. But instead, what occurred after this was none other than repeated violations of the order of protection over and over and over again. From March of last year to December of last year, I called the police over 15 times because of these repeated violations. Eventually, between March and December, he was taken back to jail, and he served another 30 days for violating the first order of protection that he was taken back, the first order of protection violation that he was taken back to jail for. He was then let out after those 30 days, and then after that, he violated the order of protection again. This time, he was taken back to jail, and to my surprise, he was let out of jail the very next day after he was arrested. And that was after he'd already been to jail twice. After he'd been to jail that time, he was let out, and then again, he violated the order of protection, and he was taken to jail again for a fourth time in total now. This cycle kept repeating: violation, arrest, release, and then another violation. It took all of this before he was finally jailed and held accountable and kept into the jail until his prison sentencing, where he deservedly sits today. Each time I did what victims are told to do. I reported everything, I documented everything, and I cooperated fully. But current law leaves the burden on victims to continue to prove the danger of what's being done to them and to have to face these repeated violations over and over again. The burden was placed on me and not the person that did this to me, and I shouldn't have to keep proving myself and keep making the process move forward. I should be taken seriously the first time, or the second, or the third, or the fourth. An order of protection should not require over a dozen calls to the police to be enforced, and it should not take multiple arrests before real consequences happen. This is why the proposed laws being discussed today are so important. If the first violation of an order of protection were a felony, it would send a clear message that these orders are serious and enforceable, and it would also allow these violations to carry the weight that they deserve from the first incident. These laws would also shift the burden off of the victims and the people that are trying to help the victims onto the people that are committing these crimes in the first place. This is about prevention, accountability, and finally giving victims the protection and safety that our laws are supposed to guarantee. It's not about punishment, it's about prevention, and it's about stopping escalation early. It's about giving order protections real weight so they can actually protect victims of domestic violence and help them feel safe like our laws are meant to do. I'm sharing my story because nobody should have to go through these repeated months and months of violations of order protections just to feel safe and protected. If making the first violation a felony helps even one person, I think that it's worth it, and I encourage all lawmakers to consider how they too can help stop this cycle. That is all. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Darby Hills, and I represent the 26th Senate District, and I'm a former Cook County prosecutor. First of all, I would like to thank Dakota for her courage to tell her story. Your voice matters, Dakota, and your willingness to speak out will help numerous families from suffering similar trauma. What we are talking about today is not abstract. When orders of protection are violated, the risk to victims increases dramatically. And all too often, the results are tragic or fatal. We know from experts and survivors that the moments immediately following a violation are some of the most dangerous. That is when victims are most vulnerable and where the system must respond quickly and seriously. Orders of protection do not work unless they are enforced. When they are ignored or repeatedly violated without real consequences, they fail the very people they were there to protect in the first place. That is why I am proud to sponsor 2 bills in this package. They are focused on accountability, safety, and giving victims the time and the space to get out of dangerous situations. Senate Bill 3141 strengthens penalties for violations of orders of protection, civil no-contact orders, and no-stalking orders by encouraging the court to impose a minimum of 48 hours in custody for a first violation rather than just 24 hours. For repeat violations, the minimum would increase from 48 hours to 96 hours. This would send a clear message that repeated violations will not be taken lightly. These stronger penalties are not just about punishment. They help prevent immediate retaliation, and they give victims critical time to get services, to provide a safety plan, and to get out of dangerous situations. My second bill, Senate Bill 3142, addresses repeat offenders who continue to violate orders of protection over and over again with little consequence. Under this legislation, prior violations would matter. Someone who repeatedly violates orders of protection, civil no-contact orders, and no-stalking orders would face felony charges instead of endless misdemeanor charge over and over with little consequences. This work goes hand in hand with Senator McClure's legislation to stop the cycle of abuse by recognizing patterns of behavior and responding before violence escalates further. Our goal is simple: protect victims, hold abusers accountable, give law enforcement and the courts the tools to intervene before a life is lost. Illinois families deserve a system that takes domestic violence seriously, stands with survivors, and acts before it's too late. I'd like to introduce Leader John Curran.
I'm Senate Republican Leader John Curran. First, I would like to thank Dakota for sharing her story. As a former prosecutor in Cook County, I understand not just the physical toll that domestic violence has on victims, but also the stress, the time, the fear, and the resources it takes for victims to not only go in the criminal justice system, but also try to take the first steps in recovering from domestic violence. Experts, advocates, and research are all clear that action in the first few days following a domestic violence assault are critical for safety planning, medical attention, and crisis intervention. This window of opportunity allows victims to engage with both police and support services that they need most. Unfortunately, under the current law, the Safety Act, someone who commits domestic violence, even with bodily harm, will be released unless the victim, who bears the burden, as Dakota so bravely said today, shows that the offender is a threat to themselves or the community. My bill, Senate Bill 3139, seeks to shift that burden. It is not fair to have the burden on victims like Dakota in the criminal justice process. The burden should be on the offender to prove to a judge that they are not an imminent threat to the victim or to the public in general. That simple shifting of burden will ensure each and every case is thoroughly vetted. We have read time and time again about prosecutors not filing a petition to hold, which ties the hands of a judge. A judge can't even, in a domestic violence case, consider holding the victim if the prosecutor doesn't move forward with that. And oftentimes, a judge is also has their hands tied because the burden is on the victim and what state the victim is in to actually present in court and provide their story. By shifting that burden to the offender, we will ensure that each and every case is thoroughly reviewed, thoroughly vetted, and safety of the victim and security of the victim in the first 72 hours after a domestic violence incident is paramount. It is the number one consideration that a judge takes. Domestic violence is a very serious issue that affects people of every class, every background, and every geographic area of this, not only this state, of this country. There's no perfect solution, but as Senator McClure said, we must act, and we must act now. The stats are alarming. Domestic violence deaths in the last 2 years have risen over 100%. The current law is not addressing this crisis situation. Now is the time. This legislative package offers many opportunities to strengthen the system for domestic violence survivors and hold victims accountable, and actually putting teeth to the orders of protection, no contact orders, to better enforce them and better ensure that those that are subject to them take them seriously and don't even think about violating them. With that, I would like to open it up for questions. We'd like to go on-topic questions first, and I will stick around for off-topic as well.
Thanks for the opportunity. We've heard, especially in the safety discussions, that the governor and the supermajority Democrats coddle criminals, that someone such as an attacker would get more consideration than a victim. How warm is the governor's seat and Democrats' seats on this?
I've discussed, I've only discussed it in the Senate. I've not discussed it with the governor, but I've had preliminary discussions on this package of proposals. My hope is we're going to get a thorough discussion and hearing in the Criminal Law Committee on each of these 4 proposals. And you know, I know we have others. There's other members of the Republican Senate and there's Democratic senators that have proposals on domestic violence. This is at a crisis point right now, Dave. So I think it is incredibly important that each and every thoughtful proposal, which all these are, be on the table and be discussed in committee. And let's move forward in actually strengthening criminal law, the statutes for domestic violence victims.
And you've discussed with whom?
I've discussed with the committee chair, that's the starting point, as you know.
How much of the bill that you introduced like kind of contradicts the Safety Act?
This does not contradict the Safety Act. This does not do away with the Safety Act. This amends it. There have been at least 3, might be 4 amendments to the Safety Act already. This is hyper-focused on domestic violence. So the prior amendments to the Safety Act were much more broad in topic. This is taking what I think is the most alarming trend in public safety today, which is the rise in deaths related to domestic violence, with some hyper-focused proposals to try to strengthen the existing penalties, which really don't have anything to do with the Safety Act. But my proposal is that burden shifting to ensure that we are giving victims an opportunity in the first initial days, windows, to have the time, have the space to actually start the recovery process.
How exactly does it shift that burden?
So under the Safety Act right now, the burden is on the state to show that an individual is a real and present threat to a person or the community. The person being the victim in domestic violence cases. What my proposal would do, it would shift that burden, and the accused, the individual arrested for domestic violence, would have the burden to show that they are not a threat to the victim, that their release would not pose a threat to the victim or the community at large. So it is that simple shift will ensure that each and every case is thoroughly vetted, heard and vetted by the judge, the independent arbiter in the criminal justice process, to better ensure that those that are a threat are actually held.
Dakota, how does it feel to see a local lawmaker like Steve McClure standing up for you and many others across central Illinois?
When I first started this process, from the very first phone call that I made to the police in March, I don't think it was taken seriously at all. 10 or 11 months went by and it seemed that not a lot of people cared. So seeing where we are today, it really means a lot to me, and it's not just me. There's a lot of people that go through domestic violence, and it's not taken seriously for them either. So it's really important, and it means a lot to me, and not only me, but other victims as well, that somebody is standing up for us for once.
And a question for any of the lawmakers here. Obviously, this isn't a partisan issue. Are you talking with your members on the other side of the aisle to get this a bipartisan push this spring?
Yeah, I have already discussed this package with the committee chair. Those discussions, we have started the legislative session, will be ongoing. My hope is that these will all be heard in committee. That's the starting, that is the opportunity to get the vetting and have the discussion amongst lawmakers, build a consensus around this. We really do need to do something on domestic violence. The evidence is clear, the empirical evidence is clear right now with the rapid rise in deaths related to domestic violence. So if not this, then I would ask my colleagues on the other side of the aisle what?
Obviously, we know that many plans may not actually pass out of either chamber until after the election, but this seems to be a top priority here. Would you push to have this done in late February, even early March?
Well, I mean, it takes time to get through two chambers, especially in the arena of criminal law. So I think we've seen how exhaustive it's been to get the amendments to the Safety Act that have already taken place. So it would be a lengthy process. The earlier we start here in the Senate, the better.
Another important one having to deal with the Safety Act provisions. We know that there's likely going to be some tweaks to the law this year coming from the Democratic side. Would you like these to be standalone bills instead of being put into one massive omnibus that you may or may not support some of the things from the Democratic side?
I would like it. I would like either, Mike. I'd take the opportunity either way. I think inclusion in this, I can only speak for myself, would be a very compelling case to support whatever else is included in that omnibus.
How effective do you think previous laws like Karina's law has been at reducing gun deaths from domestic violence?
I would tell you Karina's law is new, so it is just in the early stages of implementation right now. But Illinois' red flag law, I can speak for the county I predominantly represent, DuPage County, which has been the most active user of Illinois' red flag law. We count for about 40% of the petitions filed statewide. So it is not just what we pass here, but is really, it highlights the that shouldn't be. It should be more robustly used around the state. It really also is the implementation down the line. That's why it's so incredibly important when you're talking about tools for law enforcement that we get feedback from police and prosecutors about what would be effective, what can they actually use and carry out in implementation. Okay, if anyone else have anything on topic, if not, happy to take some off topic.
How's that budget coming?
I'm looking forward to the governor's address on February 18th. I'm going to be meeting with the governor on February 17th to get a preview of that. And, it's going to be a challenging budget year. So I think that is really when you're going to see activity pick up around here, which, so we'll be excited to hear what the governor says and then take it from there.
Do you think that this is the year that the discussion of cuts to spending and no court projects is actually taken in by your Democratic colleagues? And, we've obviously seen efficiencies made within state agencies. Was that enough? Is there more needed?
Well, I would highlight that I think the governor started that conversation last year, Mike. We did have a $2 billion increase in spending last year, but you saw the rollback on the health care for working age population for undocumented immigrants last year, and that was something that the governor in his budget address readily admitted that that it was a mistake to go down that road, and the state could not afford that. And so I think that process already started last year. I expect that to continue this year in this budget.
The Family Farm Preservation Act, Pritzker, a little less than a year ago, said he would consider supporting it, but that lawmakers would need to find the money to do it. What's your response to that?
I would be anxious to sharpen our pencils, and I'm confident we can find the money to do that. Preserving the family farm, the generational family farm, is a top priority of the Illinois Senate Republican Caucus. Senator Joe Tracy has been a leader on reforming the estate tax to make sure multi-generational farms in Illinois are able to continue, which has been a bedrock of this state. And really the Illinois economy. So if that's the challenge, be happy to take the governor up on that.
I think we have time for one more question, if there's one more.
What we got to do? You're not even in session.
We only booked half an hour.
Senator McClure, I know last year you fought for a bill that did not move to address students who have sexually assaulted others. Obviously, you were very passionate about that. We had a local parent fighting for that. You filed that bill again. You're trying to get that one done. Do you feel that you have Democratic support on that this year?
So I've been working the bill for 2 days, and we have, I think, 34 sponsors of that bill, which is exactly how many I had after working the bill all session last year. And we're going to have a press conference on that bill on February 26th. So I am going to work that bill very, very hard, and I think it's really important. I think you've seen my public safety is my most important issue, and this package and that bill are very, very important to me.